We begin the briefing. We have many journalists and many speakers today because the story with the elimination of or with the raising of graffiti on the Maidan had stirred up public opinion. That's why I will invite speakers one by one. They represent public organizations, NGOs, etc. We have the discussion, you cannot erase the memory. We have Mr. Volodymyr Trovich, director of the National Institute of Memory, Mr. Sidorenko, who is leader of the victims of Maidan. Then we'll have Skype with Eugenia Kaliba, then Vladislava Smak, leader of the Urban Studies Center from the Kyiv-Mohyla University, the representative from Academic Institute, who's the owner of the premises which destroyed the graffiti, and Mr. Yevgen Kurachka, who's one of the founders of Ukrainian Crisis Media Center. We start with Mr. Trovich. Graffiti on Grushevsky Street, which have been being broadly discussed for the last 2 days, is one of the symbols of Maidan and a reminder how much we had paid for our freedom. But this issue should be reviewed and seen not only in the light of remembrance point of view, but also from the legal point of view. There is the order of the Ministry of Culture from 2014. This very spot, this very location had become the object of commemoration, the object of monumental heritage, and the destroyal of this monument is subject to responsibility. So the National Memory Institute applied to the National Prosecutor's Office and to the police seeking for appropriate punishment for the person who initiated this. We believe this is very important. This punishment is very important to prevent further destroyal of the objects of memory in our country. Besides that, besides this response to the grave events that happened, we should prevent this for the future, and this will be the responsibility of the Museum of Revolution, which has to be developed in nearest future. In September, the National Memory Complex will start to develop. At the same time, the the Kyiv City Council has to allocate land plot for this. Then, during 2 years, the first building of the Museum of Dignity should be erected. Before the finalization of the new building, the temporary museum will be opened in a Ukrainian house, which is closely related to the events on Maidan. We believe that institutional steps which should be taken by the state to preserve memory about Maidan are very important. And I'm happy that civil society responded very proactively, that this crime should be punished. And now there are it's turn of state bodies to respond. Deputy Director of the Revolution of Dignity Museum, Miss Antonina Pavlov. Good afternoon, I'm Antonina Pavlov, Deputy Director of the Revolution of Dignity Museum. First of all, I would like to mention that those icons of revolution, how we called that graffiti, and the destroyal of that graffiti is a challenge to our freedom and a challenge to all the values for which Maidan stood for. This is also the probe of our ability to counteract those forces which wish to destroy Maidan victories, Maidan achievements. I believe that very active response from civil society had demonstrated that our society is ready to fight for its freedom and to prevent the destroyal of monuments. And I believe that this case should be filed to court, and those who destroyed the artifacts of revolution and cynically commented on those things, they should be punished. Because the tone of that comments, which was very cynical, it should be somehow noted and punished. At the same time, this is a signal, very bright signal, that artifacts that are collected for the Museum of Dignity, they stay in danger. They are endangered by the fact that the Museum of Dignity has now premises that more than 2,500 exhibits which had been collected and remain neglected in improper premises. They are not under security. They are not protected from humidity, from degradation, etc. Unfortunately, all our appeals to the authorities remained without any response. By the moment when the Revolution of Dignity Museum will be erected, all those exhibits need to be exhibited. Just 1 minute more. Allocation of space in Ukrainian house is subject to a series of problems. I would express my opinion. I believe that store which violated the protective regime over historical monuments or over the graffitis has no moral right to remain in that premises. So I would encourage the academic institute which owns this premises to give the space to the museum. and head of the NGO Maidan victims. Dear friends, we who were wounded in Maidan, of course, condemn this act, and this is an attempt to destroy the Maidan spirit. Of course, we condemn cynical and vandal activities which followed the erasement of graffiti when shop windows were broken by activists, and another vandal activities were done against those who destroyed graffiti. We believe that police and enforcement bodies should investigate the case, should find those who initiated destroyal of graffiti and punish them. We believe that now, upon registration of this case, Minister Avaka will put it under his special control, and that by the end of this week we will hear the news. On the other hand, the possibility to destroy graffiti is a result of our irresponsibility. As a civil society, we had to demonstrate clearly that we wish to protect this memory, and that's why we plan to initiate creation of a multi-agency working group which will take care about preservation of all the artifacts of the Revolution of Dignity. And the fourth, before the fourth anniversary of the Revolution of Dignity, we have to mention that actually we lack the premises for the Revolution of Dignity Museum. And I disagree with Ms. Antonina that the Ukrainian house has no premises. They have space for the museum. I believe that the museum could be located here. We had a lot of sessions of the working group, which studied this issue, and we have produced a memorandum which now is under the scrutiny of the presidential administration. And we believe that today the president and his administration are responsible for allowing to open the Revolution of Dignity Museum in Kyiv in Ukrainian house. They also should involve Kyiv municipal authorities to resolve the issue how this should be done properly in the legal field. I would like to thank all the present journalists and all public activists present here, and to thank for your attention to this vandalism, and I hope that this will not be repeated. Maidan Museum NGO representative. Good afternoon, dear friends. I would add a couple of words about the status of graffiti which were erased. In April 2014, the initial group, which was called Maidan Museum, developed registrating documentation about all the objects and artifacts of the Revolution of Dignity. Thus, the part of Institutska Street, then a metro station which preserved the traces of bullets, and the building on Grushevskoe Street, which comprised 22 objects of commemoration. This was building of the National Academy of Sciences on 4 Grushevska Street, which contained graffiti, which now are erased. The law provides that the monument, which is classified as the monument, is the integral object and it could not be destroyed. And I will quote this law that no part of the historic or architectural monument could not be destroyed. It is under full state protection, which suggests that those graffiti which were on the facade of the building of the National Academy of Sciences, they were part of the national memory. These were memorial objects, and they were the reminder about the events in January, February 2014, and they became the historic monument by order of the Ministry of Culture from October 2014, number 864. Thus, the legislation was breached and all the graffitis, all the pictures were destroyed, and this was done without getting or seeking special permit from the Ministry of Culture. And then this again brings us to the next step, which should be done, which had to be done long ago, that besides that, cards, registration cards, we need to have registration passports for all the historic monuments which are registered as historical monuments in Ukraine. And in those passports, in much detail, all the graffitis, all the inscriptions will be described. Of course, I don't wish to say that existence of such a passport might defend or protect the graffitis. I would also remind you about October Palace, which is in Institutska Street. The facades of the October Palace with the traces of bullets, they are plastered, they are colored, and you won't see the traces of bullets. By the way, this is again the crime which should be investigated. This is our further perspective. I believe that law enforcement bodies will investigate the situation, and further ruination of the Maidan monuments will be prevented. While our role is to develop maximum fully documentation to protect our memory, I would like to remind you that the premises upon which graffiti were destroyed, this is the premises owned by Ukrainian Academy of Sciences, and now we have director of the Institute of Ukrainian Language, which is located there. Dear friends, I would like to inform you that this building belongs to the National Academy of Sciences. There is a special order set for the use of these premises. The direct beneficiary of those premises is the Institute of History. 18 years ago, these premises were leased. Since that time, the same tenant leases that premises. Of course, the situation that happened don't make us happy, especially the employees of the Academy of Sciences who work in this building, this big building. Due to this attention of mass media, we should discuss another aspect. Why we started to speak on these issues only today? Why, since 2014, when the ministry's order was issued, neither of Ukrainian institutes in the premises had got the copy of that ministry's order, and this never was mentioned to us. So today we speak about 3 signatures, but why we do not discuss that from the entry to the Academy of Sciences up to the Dnipro Hotel entrance, all the walls were covered by graffitis, but now they are fully washed out and colored because this never was commemorated. The order of the Ministry of Culture is drafted by very ignorant hand, without detailization, without any explication, and we have not received the copy of this order. The order becomes efficient when there are responsible people know about it. Of course, I support the idea that the Museum of the Revolution of Dignity and the National Institute, National Memory Institute should prevent future damage to the national memory and to the artifacts. But today, when you involve Prosecutor General, you should also keep in mind that that's also your responsibility to do something in this area. If there is a decision of the Cabinet of Ministers that in Ukrainian Museum, the Revolution of in Ukrainian House, the Revolution of Dignity should be established where it is. And if there are some other decisions, then again, they should be implemented. And one more thing. The incident that happened should not be taken separately, but the context is as follows. There is strengthened escalation and pressure upon Ukraine, which is happening before the beginning of military escalation in Belarus. Do not shake our Ukrainian civil society these days. Of course, they should be carefully investigated and punish some people who are responsible, but let us prevent Putin from splitting Ukrainian civil society. Miss Yulia, good afternoon. As wife of Andrei Tsepun, member of the Heavenly Hundred, we are very much impressed with the vandal acts in Maidan and Hrushevsky Street during the recent days. The monumental Senek was damaged recently. We encourage law enforcers to investigate these cases a bit more actively than they investigate the Maidan murders. We encourage law enforcers to prevent in future the situation when the vandals acts are not punished, and there is an impression of attempt to erase the memory about revolutionary events. Vladislava Smak, leader of the Urban Studies Center from the Kiev Mahal Academy. Dear colleagues, thank you for the opportunity to add a couple of words to what was already said. First of all, I agree that one of the reasons of what had happened is insufficient information and insufficient communication. The monument, the graffiti that was destroyed on the facade of the academic institute was the local monument, and was the lack of communication between the Ministry of Culture, municipal authorities, and the administration of the Academy of Sciences. So I suggest, if you think about working group, you should invite representatives both from the Ministry of Culture and the municipal council. And I would encourage journalists to monitor the situation, and even without such grave pretexts that we have today. I think the lack of communication is the main reason. And another additional reason, I would agree with the statement that there are attempts to split civil society inside Ukraine. But let us not look for the enemies outside Ukraine. Inside Ukraine, we have sufficient level of tolerance to the violent solutions. And this incident in Grushevsky Street, which brings in national memory in general and Revolution of Dignity memory in particular, is a good chance to establish the societal dialogue in Ukraine. Yesterday I watched how vandals destroyed the entry, which broke the windows, and stated that they would comply with the law only after the law in terms of monuments would be preserved. I think that here we have to think about borders, about limits of the law and justice. And here again we face another aspect of this problem. We still have no definition of the public space. We do not know what the public space is. Some year ago, Kiev City Council had made an attempt to do this, but the process of setting foundations for the public space is not finished yet. Thus, even if we would inform the Academy of Sciences, even in this case, we have no definition between the property of the Academy of Sciences, between facade of the building and public space, which belongs to the whole Kiev community. And Mr. Gina Decker, co-founder of the Ukrainian Crisis Media Center, would add a couple of words about media. Good afternoon. Maybe some of you remember that our first location of Ukrainian Crisis Media Center was in Ukraina Hotel. We organized our UCMC very soon after the first green people appeared in Crimea, and during some months when we kept staying in Ukraina Hotel, there were bullet holes in big hotel windows. But even at that time, I never thought that those bullet holes might disappear. But one day we came to the hotel and saw that the bullet holes disappeared. I asked my question to the manager of the hotel, and he answered me that this frightens tourists, and we try to prevent this. Of course, the broken window or window with the traces of bullets, it might frighten people, but in any European country, it usually has some explication behind it, and everything becomes clear. Yesterday, trying to find illustrations, I reviewed the Maidan events and reviewed those graffitis, artifacts. So the destroyal of that graffitis, it's of course very bad thing, but this had brought the issue to the light of our attention, and there are some people who believe that you can put any advertising on the trade union building, which was burnt in course of revolution. And last but not least, all my friends rendered many sightseeing tours for foreign guests in Institutska Street, Grushevska, Kripasny Lane, and I delivered at least 15 such tours for members of the US Congress and big businessmen who attended Ukraine. And when I hear that people did not know that those graffitis was precious from historical point of view, I can object that when the owner says that he did not know about the value of that graffitis, it's not true, because big crowds of people, sightseeing tours, they stared at that graffitis. So we have to state clearly what is protected by the law. We have Eugenia Kaliba, who is a member of NGO from dealing with Maidan memory. Whether protection of such things could be done within 1-2 weeks. protection of such things should be extended for hundreds of years. This should be done by society. People should understand what is the monument of culture, what is the monument of architecture. Now there is a tragic situation, and this is a good chance to discuss protection, not of only Maidan memories, but other buildings which conscientiously are destroyed by the owners, but those buildings are old, they reflect the culture from previous times. Because if we do not do this, very soon we will have we need to bring up generations of people understanding the monuments of history and culture. I do not wish to comment about the punishment of the store owner. But I believe that NGOs should protect the process. I believe that Ukrainian people are able to unite and to resolve the issue in critical situations. And now this is a good time for systemic decisions. We should think carefully how to coordinate work of responsible bodies, how to inform society, how to ensure education, how to put memorial plaques in such places near the monuments. We should have memorial plaques. There should not be a presumption that everybody should know what is valuable for other people. And Ms. Elizabeth Coppa, an artist and curator. Good afternoon. I'm happy to see you here. When I've seen that picture of a man in shorts erasing the graffitis. This was very aggressive gesture. As an artist, I believe that this was a useless gesture of vandalism. Each person has the right to have its own taste. And yesterday we discussed what is valuable. That's very good that those graffitis had a status of memory. Each person has its own vision how the building should look like. The owner of the store had written that the life of graffiti is short. But this was not just simple graffiti, this was the revolutionary art. And I support that the painters should restore the graffiti. The more complicated is the history, the more we have to tell to our children. All the monuments, all the graffitis, all the bullet traces, they are important in telling the story, not about our today, not about our present time, but about our past. And of course, something disappears, But let us not blame political realities. Yesterday's incident had demonstrated the strike between tastes. Because the person who erased the graffiti believed that he was doing right. We have to bring up aesthetic tastes of Ukrainian generations, and I encourage mass media to support artistic education and education of tastes. We will not have enough memorial plaques to preserve everything valuable. Those graffitis, they were unusual, not only unusual in terms of the technique, not only in terms of historical background, but they appeared, this was for the first time when they appeared on Maidan. They showed our prominent figures as fighters. They presented them as modern figures. So this is again an important move. But that's why I would like to inspire everybody to the dialogue, support of arts, and support of professional opinion of art experts. I'm happy that in result of this accident we became so united. I'm very grateful to all the speakers for their interventions. Now questions to Trovich. We receive a lot of questions about who is to coordinate this preservation work, whom to appeal. Happily, we have the National Memory Institute of Ukraine, and we had established the Revolution of Dignity Museum. I think the Revolution of Dignity Museum is to coordinate this. We do not have Mr. Igor Pashivala these days in Ukraine, but you may apply to the Deputy Director, etc. Please. Mariana Buhan, TSN 1+1. The author mentioned that he is ready to restore the graffiti. He has everything handy, but he needs an approval from the owner. He needs clear statement that this won't be the act of vandalism. Will we restore the graffiti? Yes, we will restore. Whether we will just restore the existent graffitis, and of course, this revival, this restoration won't be seen as the act of vandalism. I believe that the restoration is needed, and I agree with Elizabeth Coppa that restored graffitis will get additional sense of victory over an attempt to neglect everything. Have you discussed the practical steps? The Restorators Commission had to make decision. TV channel, I have a question to the Ukrainian Language Institute. What was the cost of lease per month. Yesterday there were claims towards National Academy of Sciences administration that ordered this coloring. Whether you plan to terminate the lease agreement with the tenants, and what is your attitude towards the museum? I will answer very briefly. All the documents, including financial documentation, belongs to the financial department of the Academy of Sciences. All the documents are under scrutiny and monitoring of the state treasury, and this is fully controlled by the state. The Institute of Ukrainian Language, which exists under continuous deficit of finance for employees, we paid only 50–60% of wages, and we paid for heating and water supply in the building, and all that money were directed to the payment of utility services. Then I would like to clarify absolutely definitely that neither Ukrainian Academy of Sciences nor the Institute of History nor the Institute of Ukrainian Language issued any instructions to color the facade. The coloring of facade happened during weekend. We were not informed about this deed, and the tenants rent premises. By the way, they lease premises inside the building, and the facade is not subject to the maintenance of tenants. Thus, they simply exaggerated or extended the powers of the lease contract. Actually, the lease contract is already terminated. As for the transition of these premises to another tenants, this won't happen. Now we have decision of the Verkhovna Rada to develop lexicography, and the lexicography department will take these premises and have it back. Decision could be made only when after meeting with the tenant. Now the tenant works with mass media, but we won't extend the contract. We will terminate the agreement based on the legal preconditions. Contract. We won't extend. Do you plan to terminate by the end of the year? I had no meeting with the tenant. 24th TV channel. Did anybody try to stop stop them on Saturday, whether any representative of the Institute of Ukrainian Language are present, and did they try to stop them. We had only the security person inside the building, and that person even did not know what was happening outdoors. We have time just for one question. I My colleague mentioned that this was the trivial event or accident. That's not a trivial accident. This is a crime. This is the that person knew what was happening 4 years ago. People perished. People gave their lives. There was a medical center. That businessman knew what he was doing. And I believe that I would like to add, I think that when many artifacts from Maidan disappear, we will come to conscientiousness and you may recollect that walls that remained after Maidan. Unfortunately, we have no time. Please excuse me, there are two more people. They have just 2 minutes. One short intervention from Lesia and we finish. I have two suggestions. One suggestion is purely technical. We should revive that 3 icons. And there is one more column, which is spare column, and on this column you should provide a short description of the story about that icons and how they would be restored. And then there is a legal part of this issue. We should find the legal institutions or enforcers to bring to responsibility those responsible. You and Mr. Vyatro, you should coordinate this with Mr. Trovich. Very short response to Boris. I mean,
да, я це зробив, потім постав відмовлятися. Тобто це дійсно світоглядний момент, але ми не маємо права такі моменти вирішувати своїм просто бажанням, своїм рішенням, своїми якимись моментами. Тому що таким чином у нас, ну якби кожен, хто ж собі щось придумав, то буде це робити. Це дійсно є пам'ятка. Це є пам'ятка світоглядна, історична. Дякую. Це є пам'ятка, яку важливо зберегти. І його точка зору, його смак не має на це впливати. От що я говорила.
Дякую. Може несправедливо, але за закон.
We have to finalize our briefing because we were allocated just 1 hour. I thank you for participation.